Hey everyone, my today's guest for Peaceful Growth podcast is Chris. He's a co-founder and CEO of LifterLMS. And today we are going to talk about a lot of interesting things about his journey to create this LifterLMS, very successful product business, a bunch of other things that will be very helpful for if you are an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur in WordPress space. Hi, Chris.
Hey, it's good to be here, Anil. I'm super excited for the show.
Me too. Yeah, I I was a guest in one of your podcasts, I think a long time ago, and I think it was really a good episode, and just interacting with you, and that kind of like also reminded me that I want you to be a guest on this podcast. So thanks for your time today, and thanks for joining in today.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, how about we start with your introduction? If you can tell us a little bit about who you are, where are you from, and a little bit about your business.
All right. Well, I like to say I live an integrated life, or I try to. So I'm not just defined by my business or my lifestyle or whatever, but I'm an unlikely entrepreneur in the sense that I don't have a background in tech. I don't have a background in business. I don't have a background in education, but I used to run sled dogs in Alaska on a glacier. That's a whole story. But after that, I started a blog about outdoor leadership. That's how I discovered WordPress. Grew an agency after people started asking me to build websites for them, and focused in on the education niche, which I was really excited about because I like making an impact in the world. And I also discovered later in life that I was an entrepreneur, and I like created value and building business and that kind of thing. And that's where LifterLMS came from, which is a learning management system for WordPress. And it's used to create courses, training-based membership sites. It's used by subject matter experts. It's used by schools. It's used by businesses. And then the WordPress and marketing professionals that support those industries. So that's the quick story of who I am and who LifterLMS is. And I live in the country. I've always been a more of a rural guy. I live on a little farm on the coast of Maine. I homeschooled my kids. They've recently gone to school as they've gotten older, but I'm all about a lifestyle, not just making money. So it's really important to me to build a great life, not just a great business.
That's great. I can hear the roosters in the background, so yeah.
I'm sorry about that, but it's so funny. Whenever I start podcasting, the rooster starts going too and joins the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that. We have some nature as well in the call today. So, please, I'm going to pull up your website, LifterLMS, here on the screen. And because you do have some really significant growth and in the great numbers in terms of like millions of the enrollments and installs and stuff like that. So you built really successful business there. Congratulations, and really well done there. So wanted to talk a lot more about that in terms of like how many total installs and number of clients, if you can maybe share some numbers that helps us understand how big your business is at this moment.
Absolutely. So LifterLMS is just about to turn 9 years old. So we've been going at it for a while. When we started on the initial launch, we got 42 customers back in October of 2014. Now, these days, our active installs are around 10,000. And we monetize very well as a business in the sense that we have approximately 25% of our users become paid customers. So a healthy conversion rate there. We have one of the most expensive products in the WordPress ecosystem. But we also give a ton away for free with our free core plugin, which is a very similar strategy to WooCommerce, in that you have this free core that's very valuable in and of itself. Then we have paid add-ons. Our team size is around 9 folks these days. And, we get a good chunk of traffic every month. I'm searching in my mind for the exact number. I think it's around 20,000, something like that. And we've just been doing this for a long time. And the LMS market is a crowded space. There's somewhere around 500 LMSs, not just in WordPress, but just kind of total. So it's a very crowded space. In the WordPress ecosystem, there's approximately 8 or so WordPress LMSs, and they're different. They take different approaches, and some features are overlapping. And I know we're going to talk about the WordPress LMS initiative from WordCamp a little later, which kind of gets into what's similar. But I've been doing this for a long time, been podcasting for a long time. I like to say I started my podcast, LMS Cast, at the same time as Tim Ferriss. So I've been podcasting for about over 9 years at this point.
Yeah. How many episodes do you have with the LMS Cast?
It's about 430, I think, are published right now. And so I'm a big content for growth. In my view, there's 3 ways to do growth. Kind of marketing and sales style. There's inbound, so content marketing, SEO, outbound, prospecting, and then there's relationships, doing joint venture partnerships, just being a good community citizen, getting your brand out there, sponsoring WordCamps and things like that. So there's lots of different ways of growth. And my approach is actually to do the whole portfolio. Like we do everything, but I would say content marketing is our strength, followed by relationships. And then in terms of going out into the world, prospecting through paid ads or outbound sales, we do a little bit of, but not very much.
So let me ask you about your podcast. So what inspired you to start your podcast and how it helped you to grow your business?
There's a lot of reasons. One, I love podcasts myself as a listener. So it's been a long time, maybe 14 years, I've been listening to at least one podcast a day about business or personal development or audiobooks and stuff. So I'm a huge long form content consumer. I also found with my personality and just my preferences that creating long form video and audio content is the easiest for me, and it comes naturally. I like writing and I enjoy it, but I find podcasting to just be more low friction for my personality. And in terms of relationships, I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. So every time I interview or am interviewed, I'm always learning something. And from a marketing perspective, creating podcast content, you've got audio, you've got video, you've got the blog post that goes with it. So it's a very effective medium. Yeah. I also think that when it comes to growth, there's often a lot of focus on the bottom of the funnel and getting more sales and orders and stuff. But I look at podcasting as more top of the funnel, content that you're not even necessarily trying to sell, but you're nurturing those relationships, both with your listener, with your guests. Those are some of the main points with why I love podcasting.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that you feel like you're more comfortable on podcast than writing. Is that true? Yeah. It's interesting because a few years ago when I'm by nature, I'm an introvert, and usually when it comes to sharing my knowledge or my experience, I've been much more comfortable doing that in a small group of people. So my team, they asked me that, because I've been doing all this workshop internally, for my team members, and I've been writing some of the stuff internally, but then they asked me, why don't you share everything that you share with us publicly? And I was like, I'm not sure, that if that's something that I comfort, because I'm an introvert, we have a lot of different self-doubts and stuff like that. So when I was thinking that, okay, how should I start this journey? of being more comfortable and courageous about, sharing my knowledge and experience and insights, I was thinking about between writing or YouTube or like a video format content. And I felt actually writing more comfortable than the videos or podcast. So I started writing last year on my Learn and Grow a newsletter where, like, that was like I wanted to build a habit of writing. And so that's what the kind of like platform that I picked first, because I felt like as an introvert, writing was more comfortable for me. But then starting this year, when I was comfortable sharing my knowledge through writing, I decided to start the podcast.
Yeah. I'm
So
an extreme introvert myself, which is a surprise to some people because it comes through online as this extroverted guy on video or podcast doing all this stuff. And I actually really enjoy writing, and I'm not bad at it, but it's a lot slower for me. And you don't have the added benefit of the interaction with another human being there.
That's right.
So it's like 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm an extreme introvert. Like if you were to take a personality test, I'm not just a little bit, I'm like a lot. And what happened to me over time, particularly with podcasting, and then later as I got more comfortable with it, webinars and doing more presentation style stuff online, is I developed, it's kind of like an extreme focus, and all the world around just kind of disappears, and I'm just with the guest. And I'm not even thinking about the audience that's listening, in the sense that, like, I don't feel that pressure that I would feel if I were on stage at a conference giving a talk. So I became very comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then also over time, we all struggle with imposter syndrome. And I realized that I do have a lot of value to share, and I became better at interviewing people and helping showcase their value, which then gives you more confidence, and it's a flywheel of growth and momentum there. So that's why I've stuck to it for 9 years, releasing a podcast every week.
And I'm glad that you're doing that, Chris. And I think I was in the beginning, when I was thinking, still debating whether I should start my podcast or not. I kind of like listened to a lot of other hosts and their podcast, and a very majority of them were actually introvert, who are a host of a podcast. So people like you, kind of inspired me as well to, like, as an introvert, it's comfortable. I mean, it's fine to do a podcast. And if there is any introvert out there, who's still thinking that how to get outside the world and share your knowledge, I think writing and podcast are something that will be a good starting step. And so your podcast and my podcast can be an inspiration for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Chris, next I wanted to ask you, I think you mentioned a little bit about that you started your career before you started LifterLMS. You had some agency business, or you were doing freelance website design development?
Yeah. So I started as a freelancer.
Okay.
And then I merged, and I started I learned I had a talent for marketing and sales, and even in sales particularly, which is another funny thing. People think you have to be extroverted to be a good salesperson. And you can be all kinds of people and be a good salesperson, but an introvert particularly is really good at listening and hearing the customer. And so that, I developed sales skills, and I started overselling what I could deliver in the back end of WordPress, because I'm not a developer and I'm not a designer. So I had to start building team around me to fulfill projects, and then basically built up a small agency, and then merged my agency with another agency. We got bigger clients. My first website build was like a couple $100, and then later in this bigger agency, we had 17 people. Some of our projects were like $30,000, $50,000, $80,000, like big custom projects. And that, so I just grew in that way. And I also specialized in, not just building the site, but understanding marketing and marketing automation and working with popular CRMs like Infusionsoft. And through that, developed this focus in the course creator coach type area.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a tool that did everything we wanted to do for that, which is why we built LifterLMS. Our clients basically pulled the product out of us, and that was how that transition started. And then there was a couple years of running both businesses simultaneously, and then ultimately transitioning to the product.
Yeah. So one question, Chris, I have there is, I've seen recently that a lot of agency owners or founders, entrepreneurs, they're kind of like transitioning to a product business. And I'm kind of like in the process of doing the same thing. Like I have Multidots. We started 14 years ago, and 3 years ago, I started transitioning to and focusing more on the product business as well. And Multicollab and Dot Store are two of our product businesses. So one thing that I struggle is like as an agency, it's a very different revenue model and inspiration. You have the cash upfront, and your customer is ready to pay, and then you deliver the product after that. But in the product business, what I have experienced since last 3 years, that I've been spending a lot in order to build the product, promote the product, and the cash flow or the revenue in the beginning is not that big or that inspiring. So my question is, like, when you transition from agency to product, or especially in the first few years of LifterLMS, I assume the revenue and the clients and those numbers were not that exciting. So how you keep yourself inspired, in that moment to continue investing in the product? And in terms of the spend, because this is another question that I'm also struggling, that in terms of investment and spending in the product business on the first 1 or 2 year, like what that number looks like that you should be comfortable spending before you start making money.
Yeah. Well, first I'd say it was extremely painful making the transition. And like even when we first launched, we were kind of following the lean startup method, and we built our MVP in about our minimum viable product in about 60 days, I think. And was basically pulled a developer out of the agency work to just focus on the product for 60 days, launch it. And our internal goal was if we got 100 customers, we'd keep going. And if not, we would not. And then we only had 42 customers, but I'm kind of bullheaded. So I was like, well, we're just going to keep going anyways. And even though we only had 42 customers, but there were hard times there. So like, for example, in the early days and some of the hardest days, I would pull like $1,000 a month out for myself as an owner as pay, but paying the developer who's working on LifterLMS $5,000 a month. So you have that sacrifice has to come from somewhere as a bootstrapper. And so that was very hard and very painful. And for me, I have an ability to live on a low cost of living. If that's just, where I choose to live and cut expenses and all that. So I made a lot of sacrifices to get through there. But for many years, for a couple years, it just wasn't making that much money. Possibly, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. Like the slow build in the beginning was very hard, and then. But we had the agency business to kind of offset that, to provide the capital to reinvest. But
so you were doing the agency when you started the product. So it wasn't like you completely moved out, but you continued to run the agency as well while your product was growing.
Yeah, there would have been no other way to fund it. And
do you remember, and just off the top of your mind, that how much investment in the product business you had to do before you become a profitable? I'll tell you about Multicollab. So like I started Multicollab 3 years ago. So far, I feel like probably we have invested somewhere around $300,000 of production time and the marketing. We are not yet profitable, but that's kind of like what as a product entrepreneur, I'm wondering that in order to be a profitable product business, what's that number look like that you should be comfortable investing in the beginning of the business?
Well, to the timeline first, I've heard this quote that like it takes 3 years to replace your day job as an entrepreneur. And I thought to myself, like, oh, I must not be that smart, because it took me like 4 or 5 so it took a long time to really be
Okay.
profitable, like you're talking about, and have the confidence. In our case, we decided to move on from the agency business. So it took a while. And then the MVP stage, I think, is really important in the sense that, one developer, 2 months, $5,000 a month. So our MVP was only $10,000 of investment. And there was some more on top of that for infrastructure.
And that was per month, right? $10,000 per month?
Total.
Or total. Okay.
Yeah, and it was probably more because other people were working on it. But basically what we found is the agency will always cannibalize the product, because, you've got the clients, they need a lot of stuff. So you really have to kind of like insulate this baby product business, particularly the developer that's working on it, even though the clients are trying to pull those resources away. But yeah, like including like co-founder salaries and everything, it probably took, similar to what you're saying, 200,000-300,000 to like really hit it and to be profitable. And for us, the biggest driver of profitability, of where the growth chart went much more up and to the right, was when we decided to make our core product free. And then we got the distribution through WordPress. At that time, we were I believe, the only free LMS, or we always came up number 1 or whatever for a while. And now it's totally different. There's lots of competition. And, but that was a really hard decision, because part of the minimum viable product process, even though we knew we always wanted to kind of do things the WordPress way and make this free plugin, our MVP stage, it was a paid product. It was $150 a year. Now, as an example, our everything package is $1,200 a year.
Okay. So
there's a lot of pricing strategy and stuff. And as the platform got more complex, that created growth. But yeah, it took a while and many hundreds of thousands of dollars to really, get that escape velocity of, is this startup going to work or not?
Yeah. So I think key insight for anyone who already have a product business or just started or want to start, I would say, we are somewhere around like 20,000 ARR, like revenue wise, for Multicollab at this moment, and we have invested, so I think $200,000 so far in last 2 years in order to get to 20,000. So it's definitely a little long-term game, but those who are interested to learn about what those numbers looks like, I would say, in our case, in Multicollab specifically, $200,000 to get to 20,000 ARR for our WordPress product business. And you kind of also, Chris mentioned something around like 200 something, that where you become profitable, that you had to invest in the product business, right, in the beginning.
Yeah, I'd say that math is almost identical to what worked. And it's not, it doesn't mean that every project will work, but like Multicollab and LifterLMS, there was a product market fit you got. So you have to, some products don't work, and that's unfortunate. But if you get that product market fit and you have a core customer, you've got something. But it's a lot of hard work and takes time.
Yeah. And this is something that we can talk a little bit more about, because this is something that I've been talking to a lot of new entrepreneurs recently, and one thing that they struggle is that they have this great idea, but then they still don't know that how much I need to invest, because production is just one part of the game puzzle, right? But there is like promotion and marketing and support. There are a lot of other stuff where you also need to put in money. And so I think knowing this, the some of these numbers can be very helpful in order to decide that how long and how much it takes to be a successful with the product business.
Yeah, 100%. And I know this is the Peaceful Growth podcast, but in the early days, I did not have as much peace in the sense that the struggle was really hard financially. I had to really stretch my days out long and wear multiple hats, like sell it, market it, support it, and I wasn't doing it all alone. I had great co-founders and team, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Sacrifice is not just finance.
It's not easy, but it's worth it, right?
Yeah. And also I think that's where your product mission, vision, and values matter, because I'm a lifelong learner, and I also really believe in the power of education to lift up others and send out a positive impact in the world. So I wasn't just trying to make money, or I found a gap in the market and I'm going to fill it. It was that passion, and that mission vision stuff is super important to, staying motivated and lifting you up when times are hard.
Yeah.
Okay guys, so if you're interested to check out how Multicollab works and how Multicollab can solve your problems or improve your content publishing workflow, you can go to our website and click on the Try Demo tab in the menu section. Then simply fill out your details and there you go. Now you have access to the demo environment where you can test all the amazing features that Multicollab has to offer.
So Chris, how many clients you have currently with LifterLMS?
So there's somewhere around 10,000 in terms of users. And we monetize around 25% of that.
Okay. So somewhere around 2,500 customers, paid customers, paying customers, right?
Yeah.
So one question I have is what advice or tips you will share if someone who wants to grow, like just starting off the product business, WordPress plugin or product business, and they want to get their first 100 customers. So what tips or advice would you share for getting the first 100 customer for a product business?
My experience was to basically throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So do everything. Try paid ads, do content, do affiliate program, do joint venture marketing with other companies. But also do a strong ground game, meaning a lot of tech or online entrepreneurs, they want to like do it behind the website and just do the tech, but actually getting out of the building and talking to customers or prospects, going out into the community, conferences, WordCamps, whatever, is really important.
Yeah.
And also you really have to learn marketing. I find some entrepreneurs are really heavy on the engineering or tech side, and some are really heavy on the marketing side, but you have to have both at a high level. And whether you do that through partnership, which is what I did, or you do it, you're one of those unicorns who really developed both skills. Like I know product founders that are good at both marketing and building the product. So there's not just one way to do it, and also you have to pre-sell. So, especially in the early days, we did a lot of selling products with a future launch date at a discount to both get revenue, but also get a test of demand. So pre-selling is super important, and building anticipation and talking about what you're building next, because building a product is not just the code, it's also the relationship and your vision for the future that people buy into.
Yeah.
And my other piece of advice is, if you haven't selected a product yet, is to have a core customer, not necessarily a tech that you're excited about, but if you can, build a platform level product that is sort of becomes the backbone of that core customer's business and hopes and dreams. So we do both in the sense that we provide an all-in-one solution for online learning, but at the same time, we also work very hard to integrate with other tools in the WordPress ecosystem and, be a good citizen in the community of software tools that our core customer uses.
Yeah. I want to go back to some of the things that you mentioned in the beginning about paid ads, content, like sponsoring and participating in the community. And as you mentioned that, especially in the beginning when you are starting a business, then you have to do this spaghetti approach, like try out all of the different things and focus on or double down on what works. But now, as you have all this experience and all your learning, so let's say if you are starting a new product business, out of all the different marketing things that you tried in the beginning, LifterLMS, for a new product business, out of all, if you have to, let's say, focus on one or two, what would you pick?
It really depends on the founder. For me, I would do content marketing because that's what I'm good at, and relationships. But I have friends with software companies that only do paid ads.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know how you do all that content. And I'm like, I don't know how you do those ads successfully.
But which one worked most for you, for your
Content.
business? Content. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was good, like, because you are good at content and it worked for you, because those are the two things I think is very important, that what you're good at, but also what works good for your business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what, and also what builds the relationship more. Like ads can be a little more transactional. Oh, we're going to do some retargeting or whatever. But the main thing is also not to just focus on the sale. So one of the core strategies I have, it's more of the meta strategy of everything, is that when you put your customer at the center of your business instead of the product, what do they need? Well, they need your software, but they need a lot of other things too. Like for us, they need help with becoming an entrepreneur themselves, learning how instructional design or being a teacher. They need help building community. They need help learning technology and maybe how to use other tools besides mine to be successful. So within all those hats, like, well, that's why we started the podcast, and I interview people about things like marketing and getting clients, or how to package up your knowledge into a course as a teacher, how to run a coaching program effectively, how to use these other tools besides LifterLMS. So I essentially put my customer at the center and then surround them with what they need. And my software business is just one of those things. And that's how I think about, making them successful. And for me, with that strategy, content creates a lot of opportunities around their needs in addition to just the tool.
Yeah.
And there's that saying that only 2% of your market is ready to buy right now. So by having all that other stuff, you're not just focused on the conversion, you're nurturing those relationships. It's not uncommon for people to be in our marketing and buy 2 years later or 6 months later. If we just had an ad strategy, that would be limited. And also you do need to have a plan to nurture those leads and have like a funnel of sorts for the people that are at the different stages. So not just make all this content and then have a product, but you need to get them on your email lists. Maybe you need to have conversion tools to help them make the decision to buy. And then as you get more advanced and further along the journey, you need to do it all over again on the customer success side so that they have the content they need to be successful. They've already bought. They need other things. So it's like a funnel that comes down to the sale, but then you got to do it again. Across onboarding, activation, expansion revenue, and advocacy. So there's plenty of work to do. And you can do, what I'm saying is plant seeds at all those stages. And I think of it more as a flywheel than a funnel. So you kind of get something working, and then you add another piece, and then you double down on what's already working. One advice I got from a business mentor one time is, don't continually do new things. Like you should, when you're doing like your quarterly planning, pick 3 big things, and 2 of them should be doubling down on what's already working, and then 1 new thing, which entrepreneurs are really bad about. I just want to do the new thing, but wait, hold on, this thing's already working. And there's a saying there that your market, or you get tired of your marketing before your market ever does. So don't just stop because
I love that.
you already said it once or whatever. And that's another thing I just want to note is like when you pick your product, it's really nice when you're in a market where there's just a continual influx of new people. Like there's constant influx of new people wanting to figure out how to do online education or build an online business or figure out how to take their events business or speaker, author, coach business and move it online. It's just never ending. It's just continuing to grow. So it's good to be in an evergreen market.
Yeah. I want to add a couple of things on what you shared. The first is, I think you said the thing that you mentioned about the content, that you have to write the content for the, not just for the, like, for the new customer, like, but also need to write the content who are some are ready to buy right now, some are not ready right now, to nurture them. I'm not sure if you follow Russell Brunson. He has a lot of different books and tools in terms of marketing. And one thing I learned, I finished one of the book, actually 3 of his book, and one of the book is called this .com Secrets. And in that, one thing I learned about is there are 3 kind of traffic, the cold, warm, and hot. And you need to write the content for all these 3 because, so that's how you basically, when it comes to the content, and I didn't know that. I thought like content is just plain content. But then I realized that you have to pick the topics for these 3 different types of traffic that comes to your website, the cold, warm, and hot.
Right. Yeah.
And I think something like that's also you were referring to when you say that you have to write the content for the different types of the buyers.
100%. And a fun story. Russell Brunson, there's a woman named Julie Eason, who's a friend of mine, who wrote .com Secrets and Expert Secrets with Russell. She's a professional ghostwriter.
Okay.
And she actually has some courses now powered by LifterLMS that
wow.
about writing and stuff. But so just fun story there. But yeah, internet marketing is something I highly recommend going deep on. And I've been around it for a very long time, internet marketing, and it's evolved over time. But yeah, going back to the fundamentals of copywriting, nurturing, having like how does your offer scale and expansion revenue and all those core marketing and sales concepts are super important. So it's important to study all that in addition on how to create a product and do engineering and all the rest.
Chris, I'm curious, will your strategy change? Let's say from 0 to 100, you say like, content is important and all that stuff. But let's say you already have 2,500 customers now, right? So would you still follow the same strategy as you mentioned, like, just, or anything new that you are trying or you want to try if you want to grow from, let's say, 3,000 customers to 10,000 customers?
I think, well, part of it is it's a journey of self-discovery. Like, what are you good at? How is the market changing? How's the competitive landscape changing? And a lot of it is scaling, is just doing more of what's already working. You do hit a point where, and this is another great benefit of podcasting as an example, and guest podcasting, going out and getting on other podcasts, is you need to get exposure beyond your audience, your market. So the more you can work through partnerships and also team within your organization to scale is super important. So like you mentioned, scaling from like the 2,000 to 3,000 to 10,000. As an entrepreneur, there's different types or flavors of entrepreneurship. Some people are really good at starting things and getting them to a point. And then other people are really good at taking something that has product market fit and scaling it up. And then there's this whole other crew that takes that and puts it under professional management and goes even bigger. Some entrepreneurs can ride that all the way through, and some they need to partner or hire new roles within their company to be able to cross those chasms. But for us right now, I would say it's more about how do we work with others more and other people's audience, and Also, you have in product strategy, you have what's known as your beachhead market. Like, who is your first customer? For us in learning management system, we came out of the expert industry, like Russell Brunson's book, Expert Secrets, the course creator, the author, coach that wants to make money online teaching what they know. That's our beachhead market. But there's other use cases that emerge over time organically that as you start noticing them and you see the patterns of like, oh, well, we're getting these continuing education companies that are doing, getting continuing education credits and certification. So we need to do some marketing around that. And the use cases start to expand from your core customer. And that's another way I think about scaling. And WordPress particularly, it's made for the DIY person, but also like big organizations, institutions, industries use it as well. So there's like this conflicting advice you get in entrepreneurship is like, you should focus like a laser on your target market.
Yeah.
And there is truth to that. And I believe in that. But part of scaling is, sometimes you get these other verticals that emerge and you can give them some love too. And then you can basically execute your same playbooks again, but in this other vertical.
Right. So once you have experimented and mastered the one channel or one customer group, see what are the other customer groups and use cases where you can replicate the same, the campaign and the strategy and continue to scale and grow in other verticals too.
Yeah. And it's sometimes you hear this advice, oh, well, you guys should just move up market. And I believe in that, but also I'm more of a yes and person, like not like let's cut that off and then do this.
Yeah.
Like I call it transcend and include. So I'm never going to abandon the DIY expert who wants to create a course or coach online, but I am going to expand and hit new markets.
Nice. I love it. So Chris, next, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that you and other LMS in WordPress space did recently, and was one of the very inspiring story. And in fact, Matt Mullenweg, the co-founder of WordPress, he also mentioned during the WordCamp US 2023 recently that how all the LMS companies and the plugins in WordPress space come together, and they're trying to formalize or universalize the architecture that we will use to build the LMS plugins, and also how it functions. I think it was really cool because usually when it comes to the products or in general businesses, there is always this a competitiveness, but it's good to see that how all the different LMS plugin comes together and collaborating to provide a better experience for the customer as well as the whole community. So I want to play the clip that Matt Mullenweg mentioned, and then I have some questions related to that. All right, so let me share my screen quickly here.
System for like online courses and ways that could be adjunct to something in person. They could have quizzes, they could have units, modules, there's a million different things. Anyway, this week, Tutor LMS, LearnDash, LifterLMS, and Sensei all got together. So these are 4 different plugins that provide LMS solutions. And the conversation was around what common data models can we do? So it's kind of 2 tracks. One was like within the WordPress world, like, can we actually agree on like using some of the same SQL formats? So like we have common like column names and tables, since we're doing some very similar things, or we can at least create some abstractions between these different LMSs. Could we make it so that there's not a lock-in and that users can get the freedom and choice to switch between these without having to port over all their content? Then second is that, are there industry standards? I didn't know a lot of this, but I learned some. There's like something called SCORM, I guess. There's some other, like, was it XAPI?
So Yeah, so this is something that I think is a very noble idea, Chris, and I wanted to hear the background story, like how it came up, this idea of collaborating with the other LMS plugins, and what's the progress and what's the plan in this direction.
Awesome. Well, I first met with Matt at WordCamp Europe about this, and we had a Slack conversation before that. And to just add a little meta note there, this is why it's important to get out of the building as a product company and go to events, invest in your community, not just trying to find your customers, but in your industry and your platform, the tech stack you use, be a citizen of the internet. But essentially, as I mentioned earlier in this call, there's like 500 LMSs out there. And if you look at where WordPress sits in that, it's actually really small in the broader LMS market. And I've always said our mission at LifterLMS is to democratize learning in the digital classroom, which is just built on top of democratizing publishing. It's just a certain type of publishing and some more like education-based layer. So one of the core ideas at an abstract level is, how can we do what WordPress does, but for WordPress LMS, and make it more compatible and collaborative in the way that the WordPress is uniquely collaborative even among competitors. So if you look at the infinite game as opposed to the finite game, the infinite game is all about how somebody doesn't have to lose for somebody else to win. So if we do a better job together within, as WordPress LMS, collaborating but competing companies, can we grow the pie together better? So if you begin with the end in mind, and with what Matt said about standards that are already kind of out there in the e-learning industry, it can really scale the opportunity for online education within WordPress, and WordPress can have that democratizing influence in the education niche in the same way it's done with publishing. If 40%, 43% of the internet is powered by WordPress, what if 43% of online education was powered by WordPress? As opposed to where it is now, which is this very small piece in the broader pie. So that's like kind of about the opportunity set, not just for the sake of LMS companies doing better as companies, but also bringing all the benefits and the democratizing forces of WordPress to the broader e-learning market, which includes benefits like lower cost to deliver a better product that's more extendable and customizable. So that's kind of the big picture of what it's all about. But on the micro level, it starts by collaborating and developing a standard in the same way that WordPress develops a standard for how plugins work and themes can integrate. So when you have that common core, the whole ecosystem can be a lot more effective and grow faster. So for example, if, let's say, another plugin in the WordPress ecosystem or SaaS business that wants to integrate in through WordPress that for some e-learning function, if they can do one thing that then integrates with all the WordPress LMSs, you can see how much more efficient that is. Because sometimes in WordPress, we figure out different ways to do similar things, and but when you get some standards going, we can focus on the higher level opportunities by having that kind of common core in the same way that WordPress is a common core for us all to build around. And I just want to reiterate, one of the great things about the WordPress community is our collaborative nature and playing the infinite game.
And what's the biggest challenge, let's say, when you're trying to collaborate with other LMS and trying to find a common standards? Do you see any big challenges on the horizon while working on this collaboration?
Sure. I mean, if we could go back in time and have figured this out like 10 years ago, it would be a lot easier.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, is like we're all already moving, doing what we do in different ways. So one challenge is just taking a step back, not getting too far ahead of ourselves and thinking about how are we going to like technically implement the solution.
Mm-hmm.
So let's slow down and look at how do we do it, at a standards, more ideas and figure out the data model on paper. We don't just have, it's not jumping straight into engineering. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
I would say the other one, just not just for the LMS companies, there's other great folks contributing. I'd encourage people to join the WordPress LMS Slack in the WordPress Make Slack if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
But there's industries within industries here. So part of learning management system is not just housing data and content. You also have to create the content. So there's like this whole instructional design piece, and there's these e-learning authoring tools out there, which are outside of WordPress that the traditional e-learning industry uses to create content. Like Matt mentioned, SCORM, something called a SCORM package.
Mm-hmm.
There's these other kind of file types that we need to think bigger than WordPress and play in the bigger market, which takes time to learn about how all that other e-learning technology and industry is operating, because it's massive. I mean, even the whole concept of the internet itself started in education and universities wanting to share stuff. So there's a lot of legacy and different ways of doing things out there. So it takes some time to really get zen and tune in to the broader systems of online education that have been happening and the existing standards, and learn about them, figure out what can be adopted, what can be built from first principles, and then also working through the challenges of mindset around infinite game versus finite game, and how we think about competitors, or doing it in a way that's win-win for all stakeholders. That takes work too, just to work through that for individuals and companies.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you're already thinking about it, but I would love to see some kind of a process document or your learning, when you are able to complete this whole project of collaboration and combining, some of the standards. I think that will become a really good resource for others who wants to do it, so learning from your experience. So I'm not sure if you're already thinking about, but I would love to see some kind of guide or documentation that come out of your experimental learning.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, a lot of it, what we're doing is build in public it's in the WordPress Make LMS Slack channel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like the standard itself will emerge as a document and as a documented data model and strategy.
Yeah.
But it also, the process of that collaboration, I'm sure we'll learn a lot too that we could share.
Yeah. And let me know if you need any help on that, because I would like to also join in to see how we can actually transform the process in a much easier way for other plugin companies to start the journey. So the one documentation is maybe for the you and your like other LMS, but then we can kind of think about creating a different documentation for other plugin companies to kind of take this approach, that how to start the discussion. Because the great thing is that at some point, you and other LMS companies come together and started this discussion. So kind of like how to inspire the conversations in this direction would be something will be super, super helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great. So Chris, I have a couple more questions, and let's kind of like move on to a little bit more like a kind of like a lightning round. Mm-hmm. So the question that I have is, as you know, this podcast is peaceful growth, and you and I, we also talked about in the beginning that the growth and the sacrifices or efforts that we have to put in the beginning in order to grow where we are. So my question is, what's your definition of peaceful growth, and how do you maintain that?
For me, it's living an integrated life. So I think we're most at peace when, sort of like the same thing where I was talking about when you put your customer at the center of your business instead of your product. There's this debate around work-life balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important debate. But also when you love your work and you love your life and you love the community you're with, it helps. You love the people you work with. It creates a very powerful sense of peace. It's still hard work, but basically keeping the humanity in the whole process is super important. So for me, like coming back from WordCamp US, I got recognized at the airport in DC, not by somebody who was at WordCamp, but by a customer who'd been with Lifter for 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And she had helped over, I forget how many million moms with anxiety. And I'm like, wow. I mean, that's like the impact part that like makes me excited. Like I mentioned before the call too, after the WordCamp, as an introvert, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. So I need to come home. I need to also take care of my health and recharge and reset and, you know, be with my family and, you know, connect with them. And so having that kind of full life model where you don't get too focused on just one piece, like making money or building business, but also like your health, your friendships, your relationships. And sometimes those things start overlapping, and that's where some magic happens, I think. So like I have a lot of WordPress professionals that are also really dear friends. So I get to benefit. I'm working and I'm playing and have my friends. Sometimes it all gets wrapped together, and that's kind of magical. And for me, one more thing I'll add, which is more of a tactic, is it's really easy to get swept up in the stress of working online, and you know, all the internet never sleeps, and the business is always needing stuff, and you know, you're always trying to grow as a leader, and you've got your fires burning at work that some you let burn, some are something you have to get to, is to figure out how you're going to navigate stress, because it's never been harder than it is now to get overwhelmed. So for me, it's different for everybody, but for me, one thing that's been really powerful is just having a strong morning routine where I walk and I take care of my health. I do some strength training on certain days. I do my learning time, like my podcast stuff in the morning. So, and there's a lot that goes into that whole ritual. It's like 3 hours of my morning routine, but it keeps me grounded. And so staying grounded helps. And one of the things that happens in the journey is when you do start getting some level of success, you can then start creating more boundaries. And I'm a continual work in progress of like, well, if I'm going to fulfill this mission and vision I want to do with this company and with my life, I need to not burn out, stress out, you know, neglect important commitments and things like that. So over time, I try to keep working on those things, and I'm a work in progress, and I'm not perfect, and I've had my challenges, but continuing to, and entrepreneurs are good at this, not just remaining with the status quo, but there's always another level, not just of business success, but also like life happiness and peace. And whether that's, okay, well, I stopped working at 6 p.m. I used to go till like 3 a.m. Like that's a huge clawback to like actually what's a more healthy life. And then on the other end, like I inserted this self-care morning ritual thing. So instead, I don't just wake up and start getting into email and all of it and go till 3 a.m. whatever. But I used to be like that. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that. But for me personally, where I'm at, I still have like a normal like 40-hour work week. It's just I don't have the 80-hour work week anymore. And that's a huge thing to create more peace, because otherwise you're just going to burn out, stress out, or have some health challenges.
Yeah. No, I think the routine piece is very important, because I also noticed that I used to work like 14,
Constantly.
16 hours. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then, and also that one thing that I have repeatedly hear from like a lot of even past guests on this podcast as well, that it is not about working less or more. I think it's more important about working on a right thing, because when you are aligned with aligned your goal and your action towards what you mentioned about the purpose, like what's something that gives you joy, then 10 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours doesn't matter. But if you're working on a wrong goal or trying to climb a wrong mountain, that's where I think even the 1 hour will feel like 20 hours of efforts. So yeah, one thing is important is there is the purpose, and the second thing for the piece is process, which you say the routine. For me it's a process and a routine. So when I create like a small processes around my routine, my work and all that gives me helps me stay consistent without stressing me out.
Yeah. And I use the calendar very heavily, like time blocks, and I like to work through routines more than project. I mean, I'm working on projects, but it's planned. Like there's a time box for that during the week. And also, as you get better as an entrepreneur, you start planning better through annual planning, quarterly planning. And you realize you don't have to do it all simultaneously all the time, and find that leverage through more strategic work.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, no, great advice there. And I love that calendar that you mentioned, routine, and aligning your efforts to the purpose and impact. So those are the things that I think are the golden, when it comes to balancing and finding the balance between peace and growth.
Yeah, and I just add having an open mind, and not getting too attached, like to a strategy or a tactic, or just being open to new things is super important. And because that's where you find opportunity, and also having that experimenter's mindset. Like, well, let's try it. Let's see what we can do in 2 weeks if we try that, and being okay with stop doing some things that aren't working.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Last question I have is, I know that there are a lot of AI tools and AI is big. So just curious to know if how are you using AI tools in your work and life?
Yeah, I use a fair bit. I mean, I use ChatGPT particularly for research and combining ideas. Or if I wade into an area that's unknown to me, to like kind of summarize things. Like I was listening to a podcast this morning, and the book Nonviolent Communication came up in the podcast, which has been on my want to read list for a long time.
Okay.
But I haven't been able to get to it. So as I'm on my morning walk this morning, I think I was actually using Bard because I was on my phone. I said, hey, can you give me the summary of the nonviolent communication process? And it was like right there. And I was like, cool. So I use that. There's some SEO AI that I use to create content briefs for content marketing. More outline. It doesn't do the job for you, but it does a bunch of research and helps you organize. Our developers use GitHub Copilot. We've done some experimentation with AI image generation for fun, but also just creating graphic assets for the business. And we have some AI stuff that we're working on within the LifterLMS itself. So yeah, we're fans. I'm not. I see AI more as a enhancer than a replacer. And so
Me too.
it makes you more effective. It doesn't necessarily take an entire job away.
You mentioned about the books. So I believe you read a lot of books.
I listen to a lot of books. Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite book? Like one book that you would recommend to all our listeners, that in one or other way have significantly changed your life?
Man, there's so many. Like for an entrepreneur, like if you're at the beginning, The Lean Startup is a classic. There's another one called Disciplined Entrepreneurship, which is also really good. In marketing, there's a book on positioning called The Battle for the Mind, which is really good, by Al Ries and Jack Trout. And then if you're trying to name a product or a business, which is more of a niche tactic thing, I highly recommend Hello, My Name is Awesome by April Dunford.
Interesting.
And then there's too many. I have too many books, so that's a hard question.
No, these are great. We'll put all these books in the show notes. But yeah, I have read Lean Startup and other books that you mentioned. Sounds very interesting, and I haven't read them. But yeah, I would put into the show note and also put in my reading list.
Awesome.
Great. No, thanks for sharing that, Chris. And yeah, the last two questions I have, in fact, one question. And then we will bring these to home. So I ask all my guests, like, who should I interview next for this podcast? And especially looking at the theme of the podcast, does any name comes to your mind that will be a good fit for Peaceful Growth future episodes?
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm just going through the Rolodex. I'll give you a couple. I think Jack Arturo from WP Fusion has done a really good job with. He's one of those unicorns who's an engineer and a marketer in one. And he's also kept his team small, and he places a really high value on his like lifestyle and peace, and having shorter work days and a high quality life.
Wow,
he's a great one. I'll send you some more after the call, but
that'll be great. And if you can also maybe write a short introduction with Jack, that'll be great.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm glad to.
And the last thing is, how can people find you online and learn more about you and your work?
Well, if you like podcasts, you can find me at LMS Cast. Just do a search for that. And then the business is LifterLMS, which is at lifterlms.com. We have a free plugin, which you can find on the WordPress repository or on our website. And then in terms of social media, like I said, I throw all the spaghetti at the wall, so I'm everywhere. But where I'm most active is Twitter, particularly for engaging in entrepreneurship.
Now X, right?
What's that?
Now X.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm just at Chris Badgett.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Chris. You have been so generous and so open by sharing, your advice, your expertise, and insights on growing your business. And yes, thank you so much, and really appreciate that.
Thanks, Anil. And for anybody listening, you can reach out to me, particularly on Twitter. I love helping other entrepreneurs, so feel free to connect.
Great. And we'll put all your contact details and how people can connect with you on the show notes, so they can easily find it, connect with you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay guys, so thank you for watching. Now if you are interested and would like to try this out for yourself, we offer a 30-day free trial of our Pro plan where you can test all the Multicollab features. So for this, all you have to do is click on the link in the description below, and this will bring you to this page, and under the Pro heading, simply click on this button here. Now simply enter a few details, and that's it. You're ready to enjoy the Pro version of Multicollab for free for 30 days. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.